Hey guys, what's up? Z here with Giz China, and I have here the Elephone C1 Max, a big phablet that starts at $129 and it has dual cameras as well. The rest of the specs are less impressive: an MTK 6737, 2GB of RAM, and a 2800 mAh battery. There are other big phablets you can try like the Maya Max, but those don't have dual cameras, so let's see if this phone is good. I've never liked big phones and I still don't, and unless you're a basketball player, you're going to need to use two hands to use this phone. It's also pretty heavy, so be aware of that. However, I do like the build quality and the color of the phone. It is deep red, and now that Apple is releasing a red iPhone, you can expect a bunch of other manufacturers to follow. The body is full metal and feels good in the hand, and it feels sturdy and durable as well. One thing I don't like about this phone: it uses a micro USB instead of a USB-C, but then again I can't really expect much from this phone because again it is a cheap device, but other than that there are no complaints with the build quality here. The 6-inch screen has a resolution of 1280 by 720, and that works up to 244 ppi, which is almost at QHD resolution, which is 960 by 540 on a 5-inch screen. I can definitely see a difference when I move from my Zug Z2, which is almost double the ppi at around 440. But then again, the screen itself is capable of producing some decent colors and contrast. You won't be blown away by the screen, but it is capable of showing you what's on the screen without much difficulty. Max brightness tops out at around 400 nits, which is respectable, but it is still difficult to see in strong sunlight. There is drag and trail glass protecting the screen, and it does its job properly. There is a single speaker on the bottom of the device, and it pumps out decently loud audio, but it is outstripped by more expensive phones like my Zug Z2 or the Yumi Z and the Yumi Z Pro. Audio does start to distort slightly at loudest volume, and there is a complete lack of bass as well when listening to audio.
While the sacrifices are heavy, we fight knowing that a single spark of courage can ignite the fires of hope and restore peace across the galaxy.
Audio. Moving on to the battery, we have a 2800 mAh battery, which is very small for such a large phone. I would think that Elephone could have fit a bigger battery into such a large body, but that probably would have increased the price too much. I was not expecting great battery life out of this phone, and I didn't get great battery life either. The maximum screen on time I could achieve was around 3.5 hours, which would barely be enough for the light users, let alone medium users. During that 3.5 hours of screen on time, I browsed the web, browsed some Reddit, engaged in some texting, and some social media as well. Nothing backbreaking like photos or gaming, so expect even less if you use your phone for those things. I am very happy to see the latest Android 7.0 on this phone, and it is completely stock. Android 7.0 runs surprisingly fast on the MTK 6737 quad-core processor. Swiping between home screens is very fast and fluid, and is most likely the result of well-optimized software. Congratulations Elephone, as I've had less than stellar experiences with other MTK 6737 phones. Opening and closing apps also far exceeded my expectations. Light apps open instantly, medium apps hesitate for a microsecond before opening, and only the heaviest apps will cause the phone to pause for a significant amount of time before launching said app. As a device reviewer, I've been spoiled with 4GB of RAM on my Zug Z2, but multitasking on the 2GB C1 Max is actually quite fine. As long as you're not constantly switching between like 20 apps at once, the phone should more or less handle multitasking quite well. The fingerprint sensor in the back is pretty fast. It unlocks the phone about as fast as the iPhone 6, which was no speed demon. It is noticeably slower than other phones like the Redmi Note 4X. That being said, its speed is more than good enough for daily use. The sensor's accuracy is pretty decent as well. It does not reject my finger unless I have skin torn off or my fingers are wet. Moving on to the gaming performance, the MTK 6737 performs surprisingly well. It plays all the intense games on the Play Store with little to no stutter, but that is not an endorsement of the MTK 6737. But on the other hand, it is because there is such a low resolution that the phone can handle pretty much any game you throw at it pretty easily. Moving on to the network, double check your network bands on this phone to make sure that it works in your carrier before you buy it. I was able to get LTE in Ontario as the network bands did not support 3G in Canada. However, reception is quite strong, with me getting reception everywhere my Zug Z2 gets reception. Certain places like basements or a large building saw the LTE drop though. Wi-Fi and Bluetooth are good, but GPS is definitely a little sluggish and sometimes likes to hop around, but not enough to throw me off navigation. Moving on to the camera, if you read my Yumi Z Pro review, which is on Giz China, I launched into a full-blown explanation of why color cameras are lower quality than monochrome cameras, and you can read that in the link down below. Sadly, the secondary camera here is only 5 megapixel and does not capture monochrome or color photos. It is purely there for bokeh. The 13 megapixel main camera though is not the best. On the plus side, lower end cameras have definitely improved throughout the years, but lower end cameras weren't great to begin with. The camera here captures sufficient detail, but the camera is easily blown out if there is a strong light source pointed directly at the camera. Colors are adequate but not great. Colors just are not very rich and saturated, which is how many of us like to see pictures. Turning on HDR does fix some of this, but it doesn't fix it completely. If you switch the phone into dual camera mode, the 5MP camera does an admirable job adding bokeh to the shot, something I was not expecting. It does add it in a weird circular pattern though. The front-facing camera though is 2 megapixels and horrible. The video camera here is capable of capturing up to 1080p video quality, and the quality here is not the best. Video is okay and the colors are kind of washed out. This phone has 3 points you have to be aware of before you buy: the display, the battery, and the camera. The display is only 720p, you get around 3.5 hours of screen on time, and the camera is not great. But on the other side of the fence, the phone is relatively cheap. It has a very nice metal body and runs the latest Android 7.0 Nougat. So as someone who refuses to move up to 5.5-inch devices, 6 inches is obviously too big for me, and using a phablet is almost out of the question for me personally. But if you are looking for a big phablet with a dual camera, you are even more limited, with the C1 Max being one of your only options out there. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.